I put out an article on Wednesday about one Kevin Durant because I was on the phone with a scout friend one night who I was not watching the Kings-Warriors game back on January 16th when, like LeBron's epic comeback against the Clippers, the Suns bested them with a 22-point fourth quarter comeback against Sacramento that night, if you may recall. And this guy was like, dude, Kevin Durant, have you watched this guy defend this season? He is defending out of his mind. He was raving about how when the Suns had to go small, that he was taking Sabonis down low. He was switching out and he blocked Fox's shot in the perimeter and he forced a turnover from Malik Monk. And he's just like, man, this dude at 35, recovering from a torn Achilles. It's amazing what he's doing on defense and no one's talking about it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Atlanta. Suns are going to be there. I'll talk to him about it. And after KD gave kind of a Kawhi out of the bag moment with, his scrum was over. I was like, hey, Kevin, just wanted to throw some questions about you about how great you're locking up dudes this year. And he definitely was happy to discuss.
Sure, but I would imagine so.
It was interesting for a couple of things. Just so if you hadn't read the article on Yahoo Sports, please go check it out. He said some great stuff. But the numbers definitely are very, very, very impressive, being that there's some wonky advanced ones that we stuck into the details where, according to Basketball Index, of all the players who've logged at least 1,500 minutes, which is not many, it was 57 as of this writing, but that just goes to show high usage. People are out there grinding on both sides of the court. He's blocked 43.3% of all shots he's contested, which is number one in the league. And he is guarding usage tier 1 players, the most ball dominant players in the league, 22.93% of the time, which is a career high for a 35-year-old man. To which Frank Vogel said, quote, he is more engaged when he's guarding a top guy. So all that, when I was then sifting through the audio and thinking about how to write this story, it's just really telling about how much Phoenix's title hopes, if we kind of link this back to the LeBron Lakers segment at the top of this, how much of the Suns' title hopes, which don't get it twisted, they certainly have title hopes. They didn't go spend all of their valuable draft capital on Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and then send 3 second-round picks out the door for Royce O'Neal if they didn't think they had a chance to win a title this season. And they're definitely one of the teams, just like last year, that people are wondering if there will be personnel ramifications if they do not make it deep into the playoffs this season. Just a lot's going to be coming down to this guy's ability to guard 1 through 5, which I don't think the Lakers, for example, are thinking about when it comes to 39-year-old LeBron James, which there are different circumstances, but at the same time, I mean, the Warriors aren't relying on Steph Curry to be a two-way dynamo. It's just, of all this stuff, of all the crowded landscape in the West, with all these teams that have so much at stake, it is just fascinating to me that this dude, who is one of the greatest scorers of all time, whose season has kind of been highlighted, noteworthy, like in the big blinking billboard of what the NBA pushes out and whatnot, for rising up the all-time scoring chart. He's at 9th now. He's coming for Shaq next. It's pretty amazing that he's A, capable of doing this at this level, and B, his team is going to be pretty insanely dependent on it in order for them to have success when it really matters.
Absolutely. There's a lot in there. And the story, I mean, not just saying this because I work with you, but I read it this morning to make sure I was ready for this. And it was really good and really interesting. It is.
Thanks, man.
Well, it's my pleasure. The first thing that I thought of when I'm reading it is like, I was watching that game, and it made me think of and the reason I know this is because as you make fun of me tweeting about everything, I was like, I'm pretty sure I tweeted about that. Quote, I know KD is not as nimble as he used to be, but the Kings just ran a screen to get Grayson Allen switched off Malik Monk so that he could go at KD. That made me make a weird noise. Yeah. So yeah, I remember watching that and going like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should not be trying to get Kevin Durant into the action, Malik Monk. Yeah. Although, all due respect, I mean, Grayson Allen has performed, he's held his own weight pretty well there. The second thing that you think of,
I believe my crack team of researchers that I had, and I have a group text of researchers now. I'm not. This is not a hyperbole. I learned that Grayson Allen is the Suns player who is guarding the usage tier 1, most ball dominant players, the most of anyone in Phoenix. So there will be a lot of pressure on him as well.
That was what I was thinking. I'm like, if Kevin Durant is guarding the highest usage guys this often, that's because they don't have another guy doing it. And so then you're thinking like, well, yeah, Josh Okogie hasn't made enough threes to be able to be on the court that often. Also, just maybe a little small for some of those matchups. If you're relying on Beal, smaller in those matchups, relying on Booker, smaller in those matchups. So yeah, a lot comes down to depending on Durant because just physically he is capable of handling with the 7'5" wingspan, the way he can contest shots, as you mentioned, the way he can block the ones he does get to, all that kind of stuff. Like it puts a lot on his plate. And I'm interested to see how this holds up. Like the Suns didn't make multiple major additions at the trade deadline. Royce O'Neal obviously is part of that conversation. He will take on some of those more big wing responsibilities too.
That was I saw them in New York. They played Brooklyn that Wednesday, whatever it was, like January 28th or whatever, and then February 2nd in Atlanta. I kind of followed them to. We did a podcast down there, remember? Yeah. And I remember like that was the word from everyone in Phoenix. Like right, it was the week before the deadline. It was like, all right, we need a Royce O'Neal. We need a 6 foot 6 to 8. Preferably on the bigger side of that, but Royce is not guy who can like slot in to the front court next to KD when we're playing small ball 5 stuff, because like that's been their best lineup, and they know it's kind of their ultimate, I don't know, cheat code, their ultimate lever to pull, their ultimate break glass in case of emergency lineup to go at. So that was really the only thing they looked at. Like there was always talk about TJ McConnell and other point guards like dating back to the summer, but come February, come the trade deadline, it was that small ball 4 type guy.
And like that kind of lineup where Durant is the lone big it's not something that they've gone to a ton this year, but it's something that Durant teams have used over time because like, I mean, I was going back to, I was thinking about like when he was on the Warriors, like the 2017 Warriors. He's like the backup center essentially in the finals. Like I remember writing a story about them going to him in those lineups, and it's because he has that versatility. Has always been pretty good block rate for a wing, and he just has the size and he's developed the strength over time to be able to hold up in those matchups. The thing is, like, in order for that to work, and it's a similar conversation to some degree to where we talk about like Milwaukee, right? And it's like, well, how do the Bucks get to Giannis at the 5? And obviously, it's different set of circumstances because Brook Lopez has been an elite defender and such a big part of that ecosystem. But when they're building out rosters every year in Milwaukee, it's like, can we get enough wings to get to good Giannis at the 5 lineups? The KD at the 5 lineups, Royce O'Neal obviously is going to wind up being a big part of that. But the best versions of what you can get to with the current roster as constructed is probably like some collection of Booker, Beal, Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, maybe Josh Okogie mixed in there. But that's kind of what you're pulling from. And thus far, those lineups have gotten torched in Phoenix. From cleaning the glass, this is like they've been outscored by 11.8 points per 100 possessions. Not a lot of like a heavy number of possessions, so it's a pretty small sample, but they're giving up 125 points per 100 and they're not scoring at that level. And the goal will be you have KD out there with shooters all around him, and it's just, we're going to outscore you. And like that, the vision of that is, we are not going to be able to stop Nikola Jokic anyway, especially when Jusuf Nurkic gets into foul trouble. So spread them out, shooters everywhere, playmakers everywhere, let God sort them out. And they have not gotten there yet. And what you wonder, like a coach like Frank Vogel, who is just so like, has always been I want as many big guys on the court as possible and as many like, defensive rebounders and fail safes there. Like that's just not going to be part of those alignments in Phoenix with KD at the 5. Unless KD does it, right? And so that's like, you're right to say it's going to require a lot from him. And when you're already requiring, 30 plus a night on 50, 40, 90 shooting or whatever it is. Like that's a big responsibility to put on his shoulders, but that's also the cost of doing business, right? You go and you get that guy, you give up everything for him, you reorient the team around this kind of offensive approach with players of this, everybody else on the roster of that kind of size. It means that more responsibility for the big man stuff is going to fall on the tallest guy. And KD certainly is that.